Liam. We are now live. Hello, universe. Welcome to our podcast. Today we are doing a little bit of a different one. This will be shared directly onto the Dead Roots Facebook page, which I don't usually do. But given the circumstances with the outbreak of COVID-19, it's a little bit hard to find positive news that isn't repetitive and or fake. So we have a couple companions here. We have Justin. You want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I am a tattoo artist and a local artist of Denver, Colorado, trying to make it out here just like everybody else, but got my own philosophies on life, and I'd love to share some of this helpful positivity of us all coming together and trying to help each other out in these hard times.
Thank you very much, Justin. And we have Liam over here. He's been on a couple podcasts before.
Hello!
And we have Maddie.
What's up? What's good?
Yeah, so I have a little list here we're going to be basing most of this podcast off of, just a STEM debate and conversation. So the first on the list is massive companies aren't in 100% production right now, which is better for the environment. Lower emissions are also being seen as well with lower CO2 release. Lower emissions means that people are actually saving money by not spending so much on gas, and lower CO2 is really, really amazing for the planet as well as lower emissions. What do you guys think about this, like especially like from a social standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, the social footprint of everybody is going to be, I shouldn't say social footprint, but, the emissions footprint of what we're dealing with has just been getting greater and greater, every day that goes on, and we don't really know exactly person to person what to do about it other than, taking each little step that we can, but we can see that, they're still taking down big rainforests and really not doing much to, be in favor of any kind of emissions or CO2 release getting lower in the future. So I think if we could find some kind of system to sustain that kind of thing, it would be, potentially the best focus of conversation for us community by community to be taking on. And here in Colorado and Denver, taking public transit is one of the best answers I could suggest for almost anybody here, because it's been a part of my life since I've grown up, and it's also just gotten better and better. They've started to run a train almost through every part of the city that you'd want to go through in Denver, extended out to Golden and Aurora, I'm sure. So and that's gonna be running all the way to the Union Station and DIA, wherever you need to go, the rest of the world. So really, it's all about carpooling and taking each daily action into consideration. I've even taught people how to put together their own little compost bin in their own house, even in their own apartment, where it won't smell or anything like that. So there are different avenues that you can look up online to really easily take that sideways path to being a hippie.
Right now is a great time to be doing that too, because we have so much time on our hands. It's like freaking ridiculous. Another thing that I think is really interesting is that people are being like forced to cook for themselves a lot for like the first time in a long time, with so many restaurants being closed. Like, granted, like drive-thrus are still open, but people can't just go out to lunch with like their coworkers right now. Like, they're having to really learn their own taste and learn their own style and maybe even learn their own culture in a sense. And I think that's really, really positive as well, because we're known as like the melting pot, but we haven't really been acting like it.
Oh man, that's very true. I mean, I'm guilty of being pretty addicted to fast food. I mean, we were just craving McDonald's fries on the way home earlier, so
yeah,
it's not something that we're foreign to. I mean, it's also better to think of what America has in for like original recipes. Come on, cheeseburgers, hot dogs, corn dogs, that kind of thing. You know, that's the first thing you think of. And I think it's time that we start being that melting pot and using all those recipe books we got in our shelves and really researching what nutrition that we're putting in our body does and paying attention to what that does. Having the alone time and to, journal what you're eating, what it does to you, and how it affects you. Particularly, everybody's their own alchemist, and that's going to be something that we're all going to be more focused on through the days of rationing our food, possibly, or even finding interesting and experimental and fun ways to make something extra spicy or taste weird. I once put watermelon in a bunch of Thai food leftovers, and it was one of the most amazing breakfasts I've ever had. So go out there.
Another thing just on that note as well is like the idea of necessities, like in our culture, and the gluttony that is kind of happening around. Like, we're not seeing anything on shelves right now just because the wealthy are completely stocking up. Like, I really don't think that access to food and toilet paper should be an issue. I know that that's an issue that a lot of people face on a daily basis just because they can't afford it in the first place. But in a time like this, taking that away from even the most impoverished people, that's like one of the worst things that you could imagine, like, completely.
I think the whole toilet paper thing is so stupid. Like, why toilet paper, you know?
Yeah, it's the one thing people can't imagine being without. Start using their old t-shirts or some shit, but honestly, also, I think the irrational fear aspect of this is why our governments are so distrusting in whether they should disseminate this kind of information to us any sooner than they already have, because this is the kind of stuff that not only crashes economies that they're trying to look out for, their own money, but they also don't want us going out and buying up a bunch of toothpaste and all the things that everybody else in, lower income communities that don't have that kind of supply as accessible will really fall flat on their ass for, because this is kind of effect that we'll have to deal with, for who knows how long, but I don't want to stick too much on that. I don't have too much time.
Oh yeah, we got plenty of time right now.
A long list.
Yeah, I read this quote the other day. I'm gonna butcher it right now, but it was something along the lines of, if the first thing that you do in the midst of an economic collapse is readjust your stocks, you should not be in a role of public servant. And I just thought that was highly, highly impactful. Like, these are all things that we've seen, that we've been trying to debate, but people just have not been paying that much attention to, or like even voting, or just doing their own due diligence to better themselves in the world that we have. Like, we should be getting people that represent our entire demographic and not just the wealthy lifetime politicians.
Yep, exactly. And that's a really good way of putting it. I will kind of share a little bit of a personal story here in a second, but one of our friends just shared a very specific post about Senator Richard Burr sold his stock in response to an early warning from the Senate Intelligence Committee about COVID-19. He chose to make a buck off the lives of our friends, parents, and loved ones, so call him and resign, and call him to resign his office number at 202-224-3154. Press 2 for a person. And that is quoted from my friend Raphael. I won't say his last name, just out of respect, but very, very good things to be interested in and aware of right now as things kind of develop. But also, I actually witnessed my friend at a tattoo shop, because our tattoo shop was trying to just refill on our toilet paper before our customers, started getting really angry and clogging our pipes and all that kind of thing, we got a text message from a mutual friend of a customer that there was toilet paper at said Walgreens on 80th Street, and one of our tattoo artists said, "Got it good," and rushed out of the tattoo shop and went there immediately to find people tearing open a pallet off of a truck that was being delivered out front. So he was too late and rushed to 3 different other places, Dollar Trees and that kind of thing, and found nothing. So it's very apparent that people are, full of it with trying to stock up on this kind of thing. Apparently, packaging delivery has been completely taken over by toilet paper as well, which is just overwhelming to me.
100%. Like, we have someone that lives with us that works for UPS, and his trucks are entirely packed with personal deliveries of toilet paper right now, like every single one, and the delivery system's getting so out of hand that UPS is now covering for FedEx and a lot of their packages that they cannot continue to deliver right now. They're just running out of space. It's nuts, and not all that many people have the luxury of being able to do that. And I just think I just cannot stress that enough, especially with a lot of particular politicians. They have the best interest of the people in mind. Like, there's just so many issues that are being brought to light right now that I cannot fathom is actually being brought to light right now.
Yeah, and that's a good segue to maybe some of the fake news and all the stuff that we've been hearing about that, but maybe later. I don't know how far that is down the list. But
Well, next thing up on the list.
It's very true that I do know that, some politicians are taking it very seriously and getting a good reputation off of this. Like, for instance, Bernie Sanders is doing a really good job in raising $2 million so far in using his crowdfunding services to raise money to feed America. And I know oh man, forgot what I was gonna say about the other guy, but go ahead about what I was saying.
Well, speaking of those resources that Bernie Sanders is really working on, I will have some resources listed in the description of this podcast for any of you who will need those resources or need any sort of assistance. Hopefully some of those will be able to help you out. Be sure to check out the description. I know this is kind of an awful thing, but we have the right to overthrow our own government. Like, in our Constitution, if we find that it is unjust. Granted, our Constitution was written when there was significantly less people here, but I just think it's really interesting that COVID-19 is the only thing that's bringing all these things to light, while we're all locked up in our houses right now, when we could be completely out there trying to take over our government, because only now is a horde of people actually a threat to the government. Like, us being locked up in our houses, I completely understand that. I have a complete respect for that in the sense of what kind of virus this is, how quickly this kind of thing can mutate and become a drastic global catastrophe. But at the same time, this should be a time where we're making phone calls, where we're like trying to contact our governors and our senators and everyone in order to tell them what the people want. Like, this is a great time for us to be active. A fantastic time for us to be active. Granted, the delivery systems are a little bit overpacked right now, so use your fax machines if you have them still and make your phone calls. Definitely call that number that Justin just shouted out as well. Like,
petitions are amazing as well.
Completely.
Virtual crowds come in the form of petitions. So find your local, politicians and get behind those that you support, of course. But that's how you get involved.
Oh, for sure. Get involved. something else on that note, we have really seen with this outbreak that Wall Street does not give a shit about us. We put in we put in our efforts not too long ago to completely bail out Wall Street, and now that we are in complete crisis, they're not doing a damn thing, and money is being spent in ridiculously poor areas, considering how many people are at risk right now.
Could you explain or expand on that?
Oh my gosh. Wall Street should not be our priority, is basically...
Where are they spending the money that you're talking about?
They've been discussing spending money on trying to bail out airlines right now, and I saw a petition about that a couple days ago, trying to get that to not happen. A lot of fight back on the COVID relief response that has been already delayed, I think, twice now, and pushed back by one particular gentleman I forgot the name of, but it is posted on my personal Facebook page if you guys happen to find me on there. We have people in danger. We have hospitals that are getting robbed of their supplies. They're not being granted the opportunity to gain those supplies aside from teamwork. And that's another thing that's being brought to light beautifully. A lot of 3D companies that have access to 3D printers are utilizing those resources to print proper materials for the hospitals to use, like including ventilation valves and everything. Like, it's amazing to see how much teamwork is going in, but we really need to make sure that we're putting our personal efforts, not as doctors or anything like that, because doctors have it the absolute worst right now with how many people are coming in and the fear of not being able to help the people that are coming in. It's just overwhelming. And I have the utmost respect for everyone in the hospitality field right now. Like, you are our firefighters, you are our police, you are our heroes right now, completely.
Yep, those are the ones that deserve the most testing right now, not the kids on spring break. So stay inside, kids.
Yeah, completely. See here. Oh, alongside teamwork here, a lot of distilleries have been utilizing their personal resources as well to be processing and manufacturing hand sanitizers, and they're distributing them for free, which is really beautiful to see that people are putting in their efforts where they can. Uber Eats has cut their delivery costs in order to help local companies keep their doors open. And financial institutions, including internet companies, have been waiving their fees and late fees in order to make sure that people can still have the resources that they need, especially working from home. Wi-Fi is such a huge necessity right now.
Very true. Yep, I personally have had a lot of issue with this whole situation arising. I haven't been able to drive nearly as much, and Uber Eats has been my kind of one other fallback, which has allowed me to actually get food to some of the nurses out there, which is crazy, but also very eye-opening type of experience, walking into a hospital with a bunch of ropes up and many people there to meet you in order to get you in the right place if needed and tested or screened, at least, everyone wearing masks that supposedly in the news won't technically help you. So it's very disconcerting to see that even our most at risk are wearing supposedly any equipment that would be reluctant to save you.
Sorry, I'm like an absolute.
It's all right.
Well,
it's insane to see that we are at such a loss with medical supplies. I've seen a lot of articles come out recently with our hospitals shutting down or not having any test kits or the swabs or the gigantic machines it takes to process those tests. So they're doing their best for the private market, as WHO has made, or WHO, if I should be all professional about it, but has made clear that they're trying to do that with the private market very successfully so far. So that is bright hopes there, but we are seeing a lot of what Trump has done to trip our medical community up, because we essentially had the opportunity to buy a lot of these tests when it came around in January, February, and he said, oh, those are too expensive, we're going to wait until they get cheaper and come from China or something like that. I don't know exactly what he said, but point is, he put a lot of lives at risk, and he's tripping us up by spreading false information. Still doing that as we speak, trying to shut not publishers, but publicists, and
just the press in general.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, he's talking down to them like dogs, like a tyrant, and it's in front of everybody on all cameras, and he's a complete and utter mob boss at this point, and it's just so tiring to see. It's exhausting to see the man that we're looking with all of our hopes to save us, to treat everybody around him with such a apathetic attitude, and extensively in lives of the country itself is what he's apathetic towards. It's just complaints. I got more and could go on forever, but I don't want to stick on that.
The next thing up on the list, it is incredible to watch how teachers have actually been able to flip their entire curriculum around without full directors guiding them, without an entire education system guiding them. They were given, my mom personally was given 2 days to readjust her entire curriculum in order to work online for every single one of her students, many of which have ADHD, dyslexia, multiple kinds of issues that they have a hard time with in the classroom, but they are granted a lot more resources by being online. And also they still have that direct communication. Like, it's amazing to see this. And it really goes to show a lot of the twisted elements of the education system. It's not designed for the best of the kids.
Not at all. And I can attest to that completely. I know that there is I don't know my vocabulary politically anymore as well as I did a couple years back, but I definitely know I listened to a podcast essentially on a politician in the early 2000s that came out of Colorado Springs, very conservative, and he put a political stick of dynamite into our educational system, pretty much saying that we could not raise wages as a vote on the local ballot in Colorado. So as of 2 years ago, or a year ago at least, we are still having marches for teachers to raise their pay because we were one of the hubs. I know that we on social media and everywhere have been one of the most fastest growing states in the United States, and that's saying a lot because California just recently had their first year in, I think, probably 100 some odd years where they haven't had a growth in population. They've actually had a steady people leaving and people coming. So that's really interesting to hear when Colorado has been growing by hundreds of thousands of people each year or each month even. And that's going a lot to, say how much we're packed in here, how much we're dealing with a lot of gentrification and people coming out of very shaky situations already and dealing with homelessness. And we have a very high homeless rate here that we have refused to deal with. I cannot stress that enough. And I stress you, I really would like you to look into this yourself. This is a whole other rabbit hole that we can't really get into right now that I would love you to research yourself and get well versed in, and try to look into the problem if you live in Colorado or anywhere near, because this is something that's very serious and needs political attention and public attention. We need to come together on this. Like I said, petitions. But anyway, we are dealing with a crisis here that is among all of us, and that's going to say that's saying a lot. It's at all of our doorsteps. That's something new to everybody in this modern history. So we're trying to grapple with this without taking on any fear, any hysteria, that kind of thing. We want to come at this very collected, calm, and have a plan. So we need to have this even down to a one-on-one basis. We need to have this as a citizen. It is your duty to vote, and this is one of the most valuable times that you can put your voice out there. I am telling you this because it's true. And getting back to the conversation we were having earlier, what was teachers will definitely have a lot more value and be exemplified in how much they have shown their resilience in lasting in the second lowest paid state, as teachers get their careers and aren't paid much more than minimum wage per year, as they have 3 months off and everything. So I see a lot of my teachers at Home Depot with a summer job. I mean, it's not unlikely for you to see that kind of thing. So it's
not at all. My mom works 3 jobs in order to maintain her drive to be a teacher. Like, she's really good at it and she loves it, and the kids admire her for it. And there's plenty of kids that will contact her years and years and years after being out of her class just to ask her for advice. Like, teachers have one of the biggest impacts on everyone's lives.
And I will say that I believe Denmark, one of the happiest countries in the world, is also one of the highest scoring on educational systems in the world, and it's project-based completely, and it's also a system that is derived off of politicians recognizing their value by paying them equally to doctors, and that is saying something. We really need to put a lot of recognition and value for the education of our younger generations, and that's also coming out in the discussions between politicians in the U.S. at the moment, with talks about making student debt get a lot lower, or taken care of, or being looked at to be completely wiped. And that is something that we've never really seen kind of being grappled in democratic discussion before. I mean, Bernie was the first one to really take it on as a externally described radical idea, but now Joe Biden has taken that on in the most recent debate as one of his focuses in his campaign that he'll try to bring on to probably please some of the college level voters that he is trying to appeal to, I would suppose. But that is really saying something in the world that we're going forward in. We might actually see free education like Germany, where you can actually even go to Germany and get your citizenship and take school for free while you're doing it. That doesn't matter. They will take anybody. And that's just mind-boggling to me. I know that their tax rate is one of the highest in the world. It's about 58% or something along those lines. So it's going to be a long time before we get anywhere near those kinds of measures, and maybe not at all. Maybe we'll get something kind of similar to it, or this conservative the whole thing will go on for 4 to 6 more years, and we'll just got to deal with it. But use your voice. We have the power to manifest our own future, and I think if you actually take the initiative to do that, we'll promise you that we'll see some change for the better.
Our system is designed for it to be used by the people, and it's not something to be scared of. It really, really isn't. You can make those phone calls, you can ask those questions, you can get those resources. It's all about the resources in all reality, because you have to be paying attention to what's a good resource and what's a bad resource. And just like Google that if you don't actually know how to find like good resources. There's little guides on how to kind of differentiate, and finding peer-reviewed articles is a great way to do that. Anything from the public domain and the government is a great tool for you to use in order to get your questions answered. And also like accredited people as well. Like if you find that they have multiple articles in the New York Times and BBC and all across the board, like those are usually good resources as well. But back to the college note, as I am a college student, I'm getting pretty comfortable with staying home and doing school from here. Like I've been realizing that it's actually a lot cheaper as well, because I'm not paying for parking. I'm not paying for like lunch throughout the day. I'm not like paying for all that gas driving back and forth. It's significantly cheaper. I'm getting just as much help as I would have been if I was there in person as well, because they're all online just ready to help and ready to go. I feel like this whole pandemic is really bringing technology to a great level. We're utilizing them in ways that we haven't before. Doctors are doing online and like telecommunication meetings and appointments and everything like that, because some meetings don't need to be had in person. Like I saw this meme not too long ago. It was like I think it was posted by one of my mom's friends who's a teacher. She's like, I guess we can find out how many of those meetings could have been done in email. And it's real. All of these different resources that we have and all of the modern day necessities that we can utilize
can be reduced.
Yeah, like we can really, really make a huge impact on our carbon footprint by utilizing the technology that we have today. This is amazing. It could really change the game 100%. Like, as I was talking earlier about how food and toilet paper shouldn't be an issue to get, I feel like with this being brought to light, having access to Wi-Fi or a computer should not be an issue either. Like, your school should be able to give you those resources for you to be able to work from home. Like, God forbid, it's just on a regular day without COVID-19. Like, if you got the flu, you could still do your schoolwork from home if you really had the energy. You don't have to go in or anything like that. This is an amazing tool. People with high anxiety, like, this is a great opportunity for people to change the way that they're operating in the world for the better. However they need to make their life work for the best. I think that's ideal.
It's very true. I think that this is going to be a good example for people to really explore what technology can do for them, and that way we can have an easier transition into more Skype kind of connections. That way people aren't flying all the time and causing emissions that way. I mean, there are so many chemtrails that people are talking about that it's almost not worth looking into, because you feel that half of it's conspiracy theories, and and you definitely don't want to get sucked up in thinking that everything is going wrong for a specific reason that you know and only you know, that kind of thing. So you want to just be aware of what you can do to reduce that kind of interaction into something that's cleaner and something that would be better for everybody. So maybe if you get called out on a business meeting, ask if it could be done digitally. And I don't know how much authority you have to have in order to do that. I'm not particularly comfortable in a cubicle type of space, so I wouldn't know. But those of you out there that take your own initiative and earn your own raises and try to get your own promotions, I'm sure you can speak up for yourself. So that kind of thing is something you might want to be worth looking into. And what else we got?
It's just amazing to me how many people are not hygienic in the first place. Like, it is 2020 and we have videos on how to wash your hands everywhere. I don't know if that stopped being taught or what, but I think this is a really good thing to be brought to light, because we don't know what other kind of diseases we could be avoiding at this point in time if we continued on with nasty ass hands everywhere. Like, yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know. I have always been that kind of guy where I have been a little bit of a germaphobe. I used to love being in the mountains when I was a kid. My grandmother would take me up to the lake and we'd be climbing all over the mossy rocks, and then I'd be freaking out because my hands were covered in moss, and I'd, try to wash my hands off in the lake, and my grandma would be laughing my butt off trying to, just get me to be comfortable. But that kind of thing lasted all the way until I was starting to see people walk out of the, urinals without washing their hands at concerts and shit like that. And I was just like disgusted openly. But, I think now people are starting to see the level of exposure they can attain with, any kind of germ out there, especially ones that are deliberately going to transmit themselves as best they can. They're built for that kind of stuff. And I don't know, as a tattoo artist, I had to take certifications in this kind of thing and sanitation, so I definitely am more aware of it than most people now more than ever. But I know that washing your hands is one of the simplest things that you can do to keep yourself safe, and not getting sick is gonna save you 2 weeks of fucking hassle and hell. So might as well.
Yeah, completely. Just speaking of getting sick in the first place, healthcare. This is an amazing topic right now that I think people are actually starting to take more seriously than they have been before. Because it's not even just about you. It's about all of the other people involved. Like, no matter how well you're taking care of yourself, and you have your health care, but there's so many other people that don't know how to get help. People that are still staying at work when they're sick because they can't afford to take the time off. We're living in a first world country. This should not be a problem we should be having in any level whatsoever. It's not even about car accidents and broken legs. This is about things that you can contract just by being a general human in the public. Like,
yeah, very true. And it's also raising a question whether this kind of necessity is something that should be provided by governmental perspective. Things like being at home and working from home, that kind of thing. Should it be provided by your work if that's something that's going to be So I guess the last few things we want to touch on is extroverts and introverts and fake news. So definitely want to look at the dynamic between some of your friends, and usually we're able to go out and indulge in a little bit of drinking, some partying and dancing, and able to just have a night of jokes and letting go, letting free, that kind of thing. And now it's a little tougher to do that kind of thing. So just be aware of the type of habits that you have in your day-to-day. Especially in this time, it's opportunity for you to really get good at structure on your own, because this is a time of almost no external chaos that's going to fuck with your intentions on reading, meditation, yoga, a little bit of exercise, making sure that you're challenging yourself every day at your own craft, and really feeling satisfied at the end of the day, because you don't want to be approaching the end of the day with regrets. That's the kind of thing that will lead you to the end of your corona virus with a lot of heartfelt confusions and dead ends. So you really want to use this time to go into yourself and, find that inner awakening everybody's talking about right now. So I feel like that's pretty apparent in how connected we are, and you can, read one of your favorite books. You haven't had time to do that kind of stuff. And also fake news, conspiracy theories. This is really huge right now. You don't want to be getting sucked up into these kinds of things, especially if you're one to get full of a little bit of anxiety or hysteria. If you start to feel that kind of thing, even a little bit, try to ground yourself. Do a little bit of meditation. Maybe update yourself once, twice a day at most on the news and what's happening, and recognize that news is somewhat of a toxic force, because we do focus on what goes wrong in the world. We don't all the time like to, that's what sells well. That's what people want to see. That's what people are fantasizing about and romanticizing about and glorifying right now. And I mean, just try not to get sucked up in thinking everything is happening because of the conspiracy theory that you came up with, because whether something happens one way or the other, you're going to apply that to your conspiracy theory and think to your little head that it is, something that you should be preaching, and you're just going to get in trouble for it. And apparently there's
good resources. Like the CDC is all right. They're having a really hard time getting any connections for their publications. The U.S. is not granting them a lot of opportunity to get that information. But WHO, which is directly associated with the United Nations, that's an incredible resource. Of course, look up peer-reviewed articles. Those are amazing. You might have to use Google Translate for English, find definitions all the time. But if you can manage to get your way through it, that is some of the most valuable information that you can have, because it's coming from an accredited source, and you won't get nearly as much anxiety from the hype of people making up all kinds of lies about this and that.
Right. You personally use NPR, Guardian. Those are great sources.
BBC for sure.
And also, the Washington Post was just recently under fire by President Trump. That is a credible source. I'm telling you right now that he was full of crap, right? And that platform doesn't deserve that kind of fire. So just look into it a little bit more. Also, we wanted to...
We have 2 minutes left.
Yep.
So, really, final notes, I guess. Make sure that you are really going and checking out all of those petitions that you can. Call your senators, call your governors, do everything that you can as a citizen. And also jump on the Dead Roots Facebook page. I will have a craft put up there very shortly here to help save the bees as well. It's a good quarantine little thing. So just keep an eye out for that. Jump on the Dead Roots. Check out those petitions. And I cannot stress enough to look for good resources. We need to stop this fake news. Stop feeding into it. Stop sharing it. Stop posting it. Stop liking it. Just don't engage with it. It's just as bad as gossip.
Yeah, there was apparently a recent talk about politicians wanting to, make it illegal, basically, to spread any kind of misinformation about COVID-19. So
there is a petition for that, so check that out.
Yep, and also I would just like to endorse a couple of companies as an artist and local to Colorado. We have Colorado Compost, which is a company that just started a few months back. It's $15 a month subscription. They come and pick up your compost and give you a little bin and a bunch of stuff to do that kind of stuff with, and also they'll put it to good use. And at the same time, make sure you're staying clean, staying healthy, make sure you are taking care of your mental health and doing a little bit of that shadow work. Fall down some rabbit holes this week. You got the time?
Oh, for sure. Also, make sure you are proud of who you were today, and thank you for listening to our podcast today. Stay healthy, guys.